Hey everyone, my name is Tegan and this is Westlore. I'm really excited today to talk about this particular topic of film noir because film noir lighting is a really interesting type of lighting that has some really interesting origins. When you learn where it came from, it really makes sense why independent filmmakers should really embrace film noir lighting style. And the more I learned about it, the more I was excited about it. So here is my one light source for the room. It's a 150 watt bulb that's an incandescent bulb. They're a little bit hard to find now because I guess a law was passed that said like you couldn't have an incandescent bulb. It's bad for the environment or something. So unfortunately for filmmaking, stuff has kind of moved to LED lighting. LED lighting I think looks kind of terrible when it's captured on film. Or video, but if you can find incandescent lights, they're still the best. 150 watts is kind of the most that you can get and still be safe plugging it into this type of outlet here. This bulb I found on Amazon for I think it was like $3. So I bought a bunch of them so that if they're rationed off, I can use this into the future, which would be really helpful. So this stand was like $5 or $10. And I have used this lighting setup for my short films. Now, it's really interesting, but if you look back at where film noir came from and why it was invented in the first place, it actually has its roots in low-budget filmmaking. So what happened was there were a bunch of filmmakers who were on a really tight budget, really tight time frame, and basically had to figure out, okay, like how can we shoot something really quick and cheap and still have it turn out good? And the solution was film noir lighting. Basically what film noir lighting is, it's in a nutshell, usually one source, very moody, very hard light, and typically the key light or the only source of your light in the scene will be behind the actors like this, as opposed to your standard key light in Hollywood films where the key light is over here, maybe there's a fill light over here, something like that. None of that for film noir. It's always back here and it's always moody. There's always like deep shadows, which is really cool. So one of the great effects of film noir is that it instantly creates a mood for people watching the film, which is, as a filmmaker, great, right? The other thing that's really cool about film noir lighting, and one of the reasons why it was embraced by independent filmmakers back in, I think it was as early as the 40s, maybe even the 30s, don't quote me on that, but basically one of the big reasons why people embraced it, you could easily set this up, right? And just place it in the scene and you're done. You're good to go. There's not big heavy lights. You don't have to have a big crew, anything like that. The other thing that's great about it is because your key light is behind the actors, you don't have to shoot that many scenes because the lighting, the way the lighting is here, it actually hides bad performances, which is another reason why people embrace this. So it's moody, it hides bad performances, and it's very easy and cheap to work with. So it kind of hits all the boxes for independent filmmaking. It hit all those boxes in the 1940s, and it still hits those boxes today. The great thing is you can really just very quickly and easily have your actors either hold the lighting source or you can put it in the scene very, very quickly. Find a bookshelf. Don't try and hide it. Don't try and spend time, turning the light into softer light or trying to fill any of the shadows or anything like that. All you have to do is just set this thing up and put it in a good angle, to where the actor is in relation to the camera, and just any area you put it in, it's just going to create this really cool, moody kind of effect with these deep shadows, and it's a great thing to have. So a couple quick points that I want to run through with film noir lighting. Most of the time, the lighting is behind you, or behind the actor. It doesn't always have to be though. Obviously, this looks cool too. This looks really cool. The lighting can really kind of go anywhere. A lot of times it was here because the acting was so bad that they really had to hide the bad performances. And if you have a bad actor, maybe move the lighting back this way and then find better actors later on. But yeah, you can really put your lighting anywhere, especially if you only have one hard light source. It almost looks good almost anywhere. As well, with LED lighting, when I'm talking about LED lighting being kind of cruddy and crappy, I'm not talking obviously about the LED lights that are made professionally for filmmakers that you can find out there that are obviously very expensive when you get into the really high quality stuff. I just mean stuff that you would find at like a Home Depot. Those are really just for common household uses, and those look fine for that. But for filmmaking, I don't think they really look good. You can use multiple sources of light for film noir, and some film noir, especially something like a big production like the Maltese Falcon, for example, I'm sure they had, a really sophisticated lighting setup. That lighting setup was a Hollywood setup that, came from the origins of film noir and really was more of a stylized Hollywood version of film noir. And that's fine. If you have the time and you have the desire, you can always use multiple lights, sculpt the light with, tin foil or, black foil, or have multiple incandescent bulbs in different locations. I also made sure that my incandescent bulb that I bought was clear, so something you want to keep in mind when you're purchasing that. So recently, I shot a short film, and it was film noir lighting style, and it turned out perfectly. And it was really easy to let the actors actually hold the lighting. I thought that was kind of a cool effect. And we just incorporated the lighting within the scene. So that's another great thing about film noir, is that it's actually nice to show the lighting and not try and hide it. So again, saving time, but also creating kind of a mood. And you can show the bare bulb in the scene, and it just works, magically. So, you can find incandescent bulbs that are as low as like 50 watts, all the way up to 150. I really prefer the 150. It's easier to obviously tone down the brightness in post than it is to add light in post. Another thing that you can do is really put the lighting in unusual positions on the floor, really cast some crazy shadows on the wall, or you can, put the light up high and create, the long shadows, put the light source really far away from the actors so that you get these nice long shadows. I think playing with the shadows is a big part of working with film noir lighting. And I actually bought a little clamp that sits on the ground. It's got a little platform about this big, and it has a reticulating kind of arm on it, and then you just put the light bulb right in that. That's kind of nice for floor shots, or anytime I need to set the light onto a really high place where I don't have a lot of room for something like this. So that's something that I keep in my lighting kit that just helps me, gives me a little bit more in terms of options for mounting my bulb in unusual places. So again, I hope this video has helped kind of shed some light on film noir lighting, and basically, it really just adds so much mood and so much character to your films instantly. It's a bold choice, and I think for a lot of people who are first making films, it's so bold that it's something that they're not interested in doing. But I really can't I can't encourage you enough to start playing around with film noir lighting, because I think it can only enhance your films. And the great thing too is, even when you're using something like a really cheap DSLR camera that can't handle a wide dynamic range, it's actually okay, because anytime you have a blown out light source, it actually typically looks really, really cool. because, you know, cameras that don't have high dynamic ranges, the best way to hide that lack of dynamic range is by having a really kind of black and white um, grayscale with your lighting. And so it actually will look better to use high contrast in your shots with your DSLR camera, rather than to try and preserve a wide range of dynamic range when your camera just simply can't do it. So in other words, if you're trying to create, like let's say that you're trying to film a scene indoors, but there's some outdoor stuff as well that you want to capture. So, there's a big difference in the lighting between indoors and outdoors. A camera that doesn't have a high dynamic range, one's going to be blown out and it's going to look like crap. And if you try and capture both of them, you're splitting the difference, and neither one's going to look great. That is not going to look as good as the same camera in this room capturing this super bright light here that's just blown out, because again, you're utilizing high contrast, and so it's supposed to look really blown out, and it will look blown out, and that'll be great. And especially the shadows and stuff, we want those deep dark shadows. So it kind of it's not necessarily intuitive, but when you start to think about it, the small dynamic range looks fantastic when you're using film noir lighting. So I hope this is helpful for you. I hope that you've learned a little something about it. And again, film noir was totally created, totally based on filmmakers not having a lot of money way back in the day in the 1940s. So it worked for them for good reason, and it still works today. So if you haven't already, just buy a couple really cheap lighting options here, start to experiment with it, and you'll see pretty quick that this is a great option to add to any film that you're shooting. Leave comments in the section below. I'd love to hear from you, and take care. Thanks.